Good morning, students. Welcome to online learning class. As we have already learned in previous classes about life of the early man, now as you all know, the life of the early man was different from the life of the modern man. The early man lived thousands of years ago. In those days, there were very few men. They did not have houses to live in. They lived in forest. They did not live at one place. They wandered here and there like wild animals. The early man had to face many difficulties. He found it difficult to protect himself from wild animals. He was not so strong as the animals. He could not run so fast as the animals. He did not have any weapons to protect himself from this animal. The early man had another difficulty. He did not know how to grow food for himself. He had to live on what he could get in the forest. He lived on roots and fruits only. Sometimes he killed wild animals and ate their flesh. But it was not easy to dig roots and kill animals with bare hands. So the early man started making use of stones. He found that the stones with sharp edge were more useful for digging and cleaning. Slowly, he learned to make simple tools of stone. For example, he would tie a sharp stone at the end of a long stick. Now he could kill an animal without going near it. These stone tools brought a big change in the life of the early man. Now he could hunt easily. He could also protect himself against wild animals. See, the early man used stones and bones as tools. He used these tools to dig and to hunt. Later, he learned to make his tools from wood. He had also learned how to make fire. Now he didn't eat raw meat. He roasted it in fire. He found it more tasty. Slowly, man learned the use of metal to make his tools, pots, and pans. Copper was the first metal used by man. Perhaps it was found just by chance. Copper is found in nature in the form of lumps. It is a shining metal, reddish brown in color. The early man must have been attracted by the luster of these lumps in the earth. He found that these lumps could be easily beaten into any shape. Knives and weapons could be made from them more easily than from stone. Later, he discovered that he could be made from them more easily than from stone. Now, he started searching for this metal more and more. It marked the beginning of mining. Copper was used for many thousand years. Then iron was discovered. It proved a very useful metal. It was much stronger than copper. Now, sometimes there were forest fire. The early men saw that the wild animals were afraid of fire, so the early man started using fire for his protection. He would light a fire and keep it burning. Now, the wild animals did not come near him. Fire protected him from cold also. One day, perhaps, a piece of flesh dropped from the early man's hand and fell into the fire. The piece got roasted. When he took it out and tasted it, he found that it was tender and tasty. Thus, perhaps, the early man learnt the use of fire for cooking food. Sometimes the early man saw a spark when he broke stones to make his tools. Perhaps one day some spark fell on dry leaves and caught fire. Thus the early man learned that fire could be made by striking two stones together. When humans first learned how to control fire, it was an important step in their culture. It allowed humans to cook food and get warmth and protection. Making fire also allowed activity into the dark and gave some protection from animals. The cooking of food was probably the most useful effect of fire. There are foods like nuts and fruits which do not need cooking, but others, such as root vegetables, mostly need cooking. It is not known for sure when fire was first controlled by humans. Evidence for the use of fire by Homo erectus by about 4 lakh years ago. It was an important step in the life of the early man. He had learned how to make fire and use fire. The early man could not get his food from the same place always. So he kept moving from place to place in search of food. Like animals in the forest, he did not cover his body with anything. But slowly he learned to cover his body with the hides of animals. They protected him from the cold weather. Now, points to remember. See the first point. The early man lived and moved in forest like wild animals. He ate roots, fruits, and the raw flesh of animals. Gradually, he learned to use stones as is tools for digging and hunting. He also learned the use of fire to roast the flesh of animals. The use of fire was man's first great step towards progress. That's all for today. Thank you, students.